Welcome to the Senior Soup Podcast. My name is Raquel Meisick.
And I'm Ryan Miner.
Today's soup of the day is MedStar Health, the Center for Successful Aging in Olney, Maryland. Our spotlight guest is Deanna Cho. Deanna's a licensed social worker. I'd say she's the licensed social worker over here. And Deanna, welcome to the Senior Soup Podcast. We're so excited to have you here this morning. We're going to dive right in. Can you tell us what is the Center for Successful Aging?
The Center for Successful Aging is a geriatric primary care clinic, and it's an interdisciplinary care center. So we care specifically for 65 plus, and we provide that care with an interdisciplinary care team, meaning we have the geriatrician and nurse practitioner, but we also have a physical therapist, pharmacist, and social worker on our care team.
Deanna, when a patient visits the Center for Successful Aging for the very first time, what should they expect?
Our first visit is very different from your typical primary care visit. So I want to start and say that they can come to us as a consultation, or they can come to us as if they're establishing care with us. So the difference is that much like you would see a specialist, a cardiologist, a gastro, a neurologist, whatever specialty it is, we specialize in geriatrics, and you can come to see us as you would see a specialist referred by a physician. You can also come to see us as if you're going to come and establish care, and we are your primary care physician and assume care of your healthcare ship is what I like to say.
I like that.
So,
healthcare ship.
That's a new hashtag.
Hashtag healthcare ship.
There's a lot of people on your healthcare ship, and if we were your primary care provider, we would be the ones sort of guiding where we're going. What waters are we heading for, so to speak?
I'm most interested to understand and learn a little bit more about the high-intensity outpatient clinic, and we're looking at a flyer that talks all about this high-intensity outpatient clinic.
I'm really glad you asked about that. That's a totally separate side of the Center for Successful Aging here at Montgomery. The difference is that for the high-intensity outpatient program, it's the first of its kind here on the East Coast, where all we do is, again, specialize in caring for 65 plus, but that care is provided through skilled nursing interventions that are meant to prevent ED admissions, ED visits. The reason why we set that up is because we've noticed a lot of our older adults have interventions, skilled nursing interventions that they absolutely need. And if someone was able to just schedule that earlier, they wouldn't need to go to the ED, or the crisis event would not occur. So we have provided this for the community, and it's a growing program where people can come for their skilled intervention. They leave and they go home. It's something where you're not going to the ED and sitting for hours on end and then getting your assessment and then hopefully getting treatment. You go in there scheduled and receive the intervention that you need. That is a clinic where it's a referral basis only. So a medical provider must provide a referral to the center for you to be able to use the services there. Whereas with the primary care center, you can self-refer, or you can have your provider refer you to us.
So to break it down, that's great. You guys have two sides. You have your primary care side where you really help personalize a life plan for your patients. That is self-referred. And then you have your other high-intensity outpatient clinic side where they do need a referral, correct?
Yes.
Can you go over some examples of services you offer on that high-intensity outpatient clinic?
Some of the services that we provide in our high-intensity outpatient program, those skilled nursing interventions, are IV Lasix, IV steroids, IV antibiotics, wound dressing changes. We do blood transfusions. That's something that we really specialize in that is not easy to get in the community otherwise. And we also do Prolia injections, Foley catheter exchange and insertions, RBC transfusions. There's a lot of things that we do. And again, I don't expect a layperson, much less myself, to remember all of these little words and letters. I expect our provider to know what infusion or what treatment I need, and to reach out to the center and ask, is that something that we can provide, and providing the referral. So that's not something I want you to worry about. It's more a question for you to ask your provider, hey, is this a service that I could take advantage of so that I don't have to do X, Y, Z, like going to the ED for it?
A provider, primary care provider, is typically someone that they would see at a hospital or inside of a doctor's office, a Noble Care, of course. We can go to them and see them inside of the home. Do providers in Montgomery County or in the DMV area have a direct relationship and know about the Center for Successful Aging?
That's a of growing knowledge. So we're brand new. We just opened a little over a year ago in 2021, I believe August 2021. So again, we're just a little bit over a year. So we love the opportunity to share with the community and our providers, because how we support our current primary care physicians is by saying, if you have a 65-year-old patient that is experiencing changes with cognition, mobility, there's multiple hospitalizations, there's many psychosocial issues or concerns, please feel free to refer them to us. And what happens is we'll then complete a comprehensive geriatric assessment, which is not your typical 20-minute visit. Our initial visits are, typically speaking, 90 minutes to 2 hours long. We can break those down, of course, because we understand that for our older adults, that can just be a very long visit. Having said that, the typical length is 90 minutes, and then we send the report from our visit to the referring provider so that they're aware of what we found, and we rely on that primary care provider to continue maintaining their day-to-day care, and that they take in our recommendations much as they would take in another specialist's recommendations. And those are for our consultation visits. Again, for our consultation visits, just as if you're going to establish primary care with us, you're going to see the entire care team, and that's why it's 90 minutes long. We're going to have our pharmacist, our physical therapist, our geriatrician, and our social worker all see you on that first visit. So it's a lot of people that get to see you and really examine you from head to toe.
My next question was going to be, what does a specialized care team consist of? But it sounds like you really answered it. You guys not only go through, with nurse practitioners, geriatric physicians, pharmacists, physical therapists, you're a social worker. Can you talk through the patient journey a little bit more? We have an idea of how it starts, and I'm sure it's different across the board, but can you walk us through a little bit more of an example of what to expect throughout their patient journey?
I think in Montgomery County especially, we get the joy of seeing a lot of older adults who are aging for a lot longer than we've ever seen in society. We're living well into our 90s and early hundreds, and it's not always that it happens, but there can be chronic illnesses, or comorbidities is what we call it, multiple chronic illnesses that can occur. And managing those as you grow older is like managing a maze. You get a lot of information from your specialist on what to do in regard to a particular diagnosis or a particular symptom that you're exhibiting, and then you'll get something a little different from the other specialist in regard to another illness or another symptom that you're exhibiting, and it can be really confusing and hard to manage all of that. So what we see with our patients who come in for the first time and their family member or caregiver is overwhelm. Do I need to be on all these medications? Do I need to see all these specialists? What is important? We had a patient the other day that had several dietary recommendations that were just all over the place. I just want to eat food. What do how do I navigate all of that? So there's a lot of questions around navigation and coordinating the care, and that's, I think, unique to growing older and aging for so much longer. And that's where we specialize in just answering those questions and sitting with our older adult and saying, well, what's important to you? That's the first question.
I'm interested in the idea of how people first discover this outstanding resource in our community. It just started last year. It's a first-of-a-kind area resource that you and the rest of your team are out promoting and shouting about and explaining what it does and how it does it. And that is why the Senior Soup podcast, Raquel and I, were so fascinated with this concept, because it is so unique. If a senior citizen, or if my parents who are in their late 50s, I won't tell you how old they are, because that would give away how young they had me. If they were to visit a Google search bar and begin to type in a few keywords, how would they begin to find the Center for Successful Aging?
Google is hands down the easiest way to find this, in a sense. Just searching Center for Successful Aging or MedStar Aging services, they'll be able to find us online. The other piece too is that many of our area older adult services are growing aware of us. So if there's a service that you feel comfortable with or are familiar with, I would just ask them directly, who would you go to for healthcare for an older adult? And that journey is one where, again, Google helps a lot by asking the people in your community, because we are growing and we are sort of growing awareness with our community members too.
I love it, because you guys really help navigate the senior care maze. That's essentially what you guys are helping our community do. And that's so important, because there are so many dots that need to be connected and people don't really know how to do all of that. It's too much. It's really overwhelming. One other thing you guys do great that I feel very passionate about too is caregiver support. I own a home care agency residency. I'm newer to Amada Senior Care. I can't tell you how many families come to me with caregiver burnout. During the pandemic, they decided to take on the role to work from home and be their family member or good friend's caregiver. And they've come to a point where they're burnt out. They want to be able to enjoy more time with their loved one. They need some help and support and resources. So can you talk to us a little bit about the Caregiver Support program you guys have here at the Center for Successful Aging?
As you've already indicated, sometimes our caregiver is the only backbone supporting our older adult. Recognizing that we spend time with our caregivers if they want, and we ask them, how are you doing? I think a lot of times it's, how is your loved one doing? And we always want to know that. Also, how is our caregiver doing? What's going on with you? How is this journey for you? When we ask that question, we invite them to have a private conversation, because sometimes it's just easier to say certain things in private, or we offer to have that with their loved one present too. That's totally up to their choice. But we offer the conversation. We offer a space in our center, the consult room, where the social worker, me, and the caregiver can really sit and have more conversation. We also can speak with them over the phone, and we also can do televideo visits with the caregiver specifically to have those deeper conversations, answer those deeper questions, because the journey is long and it can be hard as well as joyful.
Seniors who are looking for this type of resource and care, how do they pay for this service?
Because we're a part of the MedStar Health Network, we're able to accept many insurances, Medicare, Medicaid, and a few Medicare Advantage plans. We always run a check on your insurance before we accept a visit or schedule a visit. Having said that, we really haven't run into many issues with reimbursement because we cover, or accept, I should say, many plans that our older adults have.
The Center for Successful Aging, it really is a golden nugget that not enough people know about. If you could give 3 takeaways that people could really take from this podcast and learn about the Center for Successful Aging, what would you want them to get from this?
Consider a geriatric primary care provider. Doesn't have to be us, but I always say consider having one of those on your care team when you turn 65. The reason is, when we're young, we have a pediatrician. When we grow into an adult, we have a primary care physician. Our body changes, and it's very important for us to have a provider that understands those changes and the complexity of those changes. You can age with that provider. So I always recommend getting a geriatric provider or someone who specializes in geriatrics. For example, our physician is a board-certified geriatrician, and many of our providers on the care team have ample experience with older adults. The other piece is that interdisciplinary care is a lot of fun for the care team, but it's also really fun for you. I think it's really nice to come to one place and know that your medications can be reconciled, that you can check in with the physical therapist if there's any mobility concerns, that if there's all the other things in our lives besides our health, you have a social worker that you can just touch base with, and that's both for patients and caregivers. We want to look at the whole person, and that's what I encourage you to think about as you grow older, is as a whole person. What are the things that I want to make sure are balanced and in place, or I can get support around when they get unbalanced? So those are the takeaways for the Center for Successful Aging, and I think generally speaking for growing older and healthcare concerns.
Deanna, and finally, speaking of the world being balanced in both life and our healthcare, I would like to direct you today to my socks.
Oh.
Right. And I just want to
rub it
say,
in.
she has bragging rights today because, as you know, on September 24th was a very sad day and this University of Maryland College Park parents' home when your Michigan Wolverines beat our University of Maryland Terrapins by 34-27.
We like to crush it. What can I say?
She's crushing it in football, and she's crushing it at the Center for Successful Aging. So thank you so much, Deanna, again.
Deanna, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fantastic discussion. This is a resource that needs to be in front of every single healthcare provider and senior services professional and senior living community in Montgomery County, Maryland, and throughout the DMV area. And we will spread it far and wide. Thanks for being part of this today.
Thanks so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Senior Soup Podcast. Visit theseniorsoup.com to listen to all the latest episodes. We'd love to hear your feedback. Email us at contact@theseniorsoup.com. The Senior Soup Podcast is on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeart, Stitcher, Pandora, TuneIn, and most other podcast directories. Alexa, play the Senior Soup Podcast on Spotify. That's right, you can listen to the Senior Soup Podcast on any Amazon Alexa device. Raquel and I will catch you next time. Be well and take care of one another.